joins. So hello everybody. Thank you for anyone that's going to join us live today. If you are joining live, just say hi in the comments. If you're watching on replay, if you could put #replay, that'd be great. Most of you know me. I'm Sally Rice from Heart-Based Development, your new business mentor, and I'm back after a couple of weeks off with this Women in Business live in conversation. And today I am speaking to the lovely Emilie West. Emilie and I actually went to school together, so we've known each other for a long time, both through our kind of corporate careers and now both being business owners. But thank you for joining me, Emilie. I really appreciate it.
I'm so happy we're doing this. I'm excited.
Me too. Do you want to kick things off, Emilie, by telling us a little bit about your journey? Because you really did go from kind of super corporate investment banking world into, you forgive me for saying that. You'll probably correct me if I'm wrong in saying that.
You're right. I did.
But you've gone, and then going into starting your own business or businesses, because I know you've done different things and you still do different things. But do you want to tell us a little bit about what that journey was, and also how that transition was for you, how you navigated that change between the two?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a short answer, but I'll try and make it short, and then you can ask me questions about it, because
let's do that.
So Sally and I went to school together. Then I went and studied economics at the University of Warwick, and I decided to be an investment banker because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And basically, I did a bit of research and found out that you made quite a lot of money in investment banking, and so I just thought I might as well do that. So I did a degree in economics. It turns out economics is fascinating and I loved it. And then I ended up in banking, and through various ways, unintentionally, I ended up in fixed income research. And that was a blast. But I had to say I wasn't the world's best research analyst. And everyone who worked with me had worked at the World Bank or the IMF, or they had a PhD. Yeah. And so I was felt slightly out of my depth. But I did that for 4 years. And it was great, but it was quite stressful. So in that period of time, I also developed chronic fatigue syndrome, and we can talk about that later, but that's really where I had to learn some tough lessons about resilience. And so I started studying nutrition in the background because I got so interested in my own recovery, in how that all works. And then at the same time, I moved to another job. I moved to the Royal Bank of Scotland, and I didn't really have a career plan, but I talked my way into a junior management position within fixed income research, more on the business management side. Mm-hmm. And I just really loved it. I suddenly realized I'm not someone who should be in front of spreadsheets for 16 hours a day. I really am a people person. So I found
I would very much agree with that. Yeah.
So I found my groove managing people. And then through kind of also working on my personal brand and overcoming a lot of anxieties I had, I was able to kind of position myself more as a leader. And I ended up quite unexpectedly being made head of the department of 60 people when I was 31. So it was quite a very premature promotion. And from there, my career just kind of took off. So as you said, I was super corporate. I had a position as head of marketing. I set up the customer experience team. And ultimately, I ended up as head of leadership for RBS Investment Bank at the ripe old age of 36. And so I was kind of really in there, and I did love it. And that leadership role was amazing because that's when I became a coach, and I set up a coaching team for best practice coaching in the business. And then we were coaching management and sales. And then I was also able to bring the wellbeing aspect in and set up a wellbeing program. Yes. It was like the best job ever. I couldn't almost make it any better. Now, for a long time, I'd wanted to leave because I'd always felt like I wanted to run a business. And when I was a kid, I don't know if I ever told you this, Sally, but I used to play like make believe at running my own business as a child. It's quite tragic. I just always thought I'd be running a business. I didn't know what.
Don't worry, I always had little shops. I was always selling something, always making imaginary money. So we were obviously both destined for this.
Yeah, we were, but obviously I never thought at the time, I didn't have a business idea. That's the weird thing, is you can be a kind of an entrepreneurial person without a business. But I decided to leave RBS anyway to have a break. I've been in investment banking for 14 years. I'd had a really great job, but I needed to decompress a bit. Yeah. So I took the opportunity to leave after 10 years. Everyone says, oh, did you have this plan? I have to say, without a particular plan of how I would set up a business, but with a few ideas about what I would do. Yeah. But I also because I'd worked in banking, I had saved up a bit of a cushion. And that really does help if you're setting up a business. So I gave myself a bit of a runway. So I didn't have to rush into, a positive cash flow situation. I had a year where I eased my way into it and gradually built up my business. And now that was 2016. So now we're 5 years in. I was just saying, I've just hired a business manager. I've got my own offices now. And my business is absolutely thriving. But I didn't know that would happen. It was definitely a risk I was taking, but I just wanted to go out and explore, really.
And I think there's probably women watching, or certainly women within my communities, who have that entrepreneurial flair, I guess, and know that they want to work for themselves, either through disillusionment with the corporate world, or just having a passion for following that avenue of work, but don't necessarily have that clear idea. And okay, that maybe comes at a stage before I start working with them. But how did you kind of get clarity on that? Because I know obviously you have done a few different things within your business. You're not just one thing to one person. But how was that process for you in terms of thinking, actually, yes, this is what I want to do? I know you mentioned you already had a passion for nutrition, and I know you carried that on as well.
Well, this is where I really loved being in the corporate world. And one of the things RBS offered me was they I don't know why they decided this, but they realized that I had a lot of energy, and they kept changing my job. I think they also realized I could get bored easily. So they kept moving me into new positions, which was really interesting. But also I kept learning about myself. So I'm really glad I didn't set up a business earlier, because I think I needed all that experience. And also everything I learned in that environment, I use with my clients now. So for me, a big part of it, as you said, was being in the corporate space, but trying lots of different jobs, and then realizing the thing I really loved was helping people grow. And that really came out when I was a manager, and then even more when I became a coach. So that was something I always kind of knew about myself from the start of the business. But then as I started working with people, again, I always say when you start a business, it's an exploration. Don't have too fixed an idea of what your business should be. Talk to people, tell them what you're good at, what you like doing, and see what they need. So I consult for businesses on marketing and branding. And I never intended to do that when I left RBS. I knew I was going to be a coach because I loved doing that, and I was open to ideas. But someone approached me because of what I did at RBS, and they said, "Oh, we need some help, and we need someone who understands financial services. Would you help us?" And so I was just open to that, and I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And that was my first branding project, and that was a lot of fun. So it was more by being quite open-minded and then trying things. And something that I've tried and thought, actually, I don't like that so much, so I won't focus my energy there. But everything I've enjoyed, I've pursued, which is how I've ended up with a real portfolio career of lots of different things.
I think that's really interesting. I'm actually literally today in the midst of writing an article about kind of focusing on our strengths. And, I wouldn't want anyone to come away from this and thinking either you or I are kind of anti-corporate, because I think we've both learned a lot in our corporate world, and that's part of what makes us good at what we're doing now, is the experiences that we had there. But I think definitely sometimes in my corporate experience, there was a focus on working on your kind of weaknesses, if you like, and not necessarily focusing on your strengths. And I think the one time that a career mentor said to me, well, what are you good at? Like you were saying, what are you good at? What do you enjoy? Which I don't think could be it can't be more relevant when you have your own business, in terms of, focusing less on what you feel like you should be doing, or what you like you said, what your business should look like, and actually focusing on those things that, well, one, bring you joy, and two, that you enjoy, and that you feel that you have a strength in. But I mean, that can go in different avenues, like you said, that it might not be the avenue that you thought it might go to. And how, you said you had that kind of year kind of security, I guess, and kind of helping you, having some time to figure things out. But in terms of transitioning from being an employee in the corporate world to running your own business, what were your challenges that you had to overcome, that you came across in that journey, or that you're still dealing with? I'm certainly still dealing with mine.
I mean, it's interesting because I coach people making this transition just like you do, and sometimes people really struggle because a working relationship with a company is like a normal relationship. And when you leave it, and sometimes you leave quite abruptly, that can be quite emotionally triggering and feel quite, you know, might feel quite uncertain, quite unstable. But because I'm a coach and I'm aware of that, I'd been coaching myself about leaving for 6 months before I did. So when I left, I didn't have any wobble. I was kind of waiting for a wobble. It didn't happen. And it's not that I was delighted to be leaving. I mean, I left a team that I built from scratch that I absolutely loved. So that was hard. But I was ready for it. And I'd kind of planned, I bought myself some time and planned some time where I didn't have to do anything. So anything I did was not under pressure. I think making sure you don't have too much pressure about your exit and what you do straight away. And the things I struggled with came later as I got busier. And that's in a corporate world, there's quite a lot of structure around you. There's lots of support. You know, if my technology broke, I could just call someone and they'd go and fix it.
IT, accounts, marketing.
Support in the team, someone to cover your holidays, you know, lots of great things. But also there's a structure. And, you know, when I left, we weren't really doing hybrid working. I mean, at RBS, we had started doing it and my team were role modeling it. So I was doing maybe 1 day a week from home, but it wasn't to the degree we do now. And so there was still this idea that when I was in the office, even though sometimes it was long hours, that was my work time. And when I came home, I could down tools and just relax and veg out. And now that's much harder. It's better now I have an office, but before, when I was just working from home or hot desking a bit in the city, that separation and the idea that you could always do a bit more work. And I just started finding myself gradually finishing work later and later. I'm sure you've been through the same thing. And having the discipline to down tools and say, now I'm going to relax and not think about the to-do list. That's something I constantly work on. I'm quite good at booking holiday. I'm not a self-employed person who can't take time off. But when I am working, the schedule gets a bit blurry, definitely.
I did a training on this yesterday talking about boundaries in business. And obviously we've got boundaries for our clients and the way that we work with them, but also actually boundaries for ourselves. And like you said, you know, I'm very conscious that I need to work away from the home more in order to be more motivated, more inspired, and to have that boundary between the two. You know, I've got a friend who has her own business that deliberately doesn't have her work email on her phone because it's too easy when it's your own business, even more so than perhaps the old corporate world of going, oh, well, you know, well, because it's all for you, isn't it? It's all our business. It's all, you know, all makes a difference. So it's, having those boundaries in place, easier said than done though, sometimes.
I go through phases. Like I have to reset myself every now and then I use my phone. My phone is my boss. I set alarms in my phone that say, shut the laptop or go to bed.
That's good.
And I'm generally okay at listening. And then I get a new project. I get really excited. I start slipping a bit and then I have to kind of rein it in again. So it's kind of, you know, we were talking before about the roller coaster, but there's kind of moments. It's like with food where you start to get a little bit naughty and then suddenly it gets very naughty and you have to go on a detox. That's kind of how I am with work.
I like that comparison. Yeah, I know I'm probably the same. And coming back to what you mentioned near the start when you were talking about the kind of, you know, the overworking and the way you were feeling and you know, the way you got to the point of feeling in your corporate job and kind of having that resilience. And obviously, I know that's what you're going to be, you know, kind of focusing on. How was that? How did you come to that, you know, that focus as a kind of passion of yours? I mean, obviously from a personal journey.
I mean, it's funny when you're quite an anxious person, you don't realize until you stop being anxious. So I didn't realize that I was an anxious person until I got chronic fatigue syndrome. But I think I'd always been quite a hyper, well, you knew me as a child, quite a hyper anxious person in some ways. And then I went to uni and had a great time, but overfilled my schedule. I wasn't just doing my degree. I was doing loads of extracurricular groups and teams because I love doing that. And then I started work. I graduated and started work 2 weeks later. So I didn't really have a break. And I went straight into investment banking. So I was just go without really much downtime. And then in banking, which I really loved it, but I did find it stressful at first because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. You know, imposter syndrome, I'd get found out. I was learning so much, which is great. I was having to take exams, but there was it felt like there was a lot of pressure on top of long hours, on top of quite a lot of going out partying. And I also was a complete gym bunny. So lots of time at the gym, probably not enough sleep. it took about 4 years to catch up with me. And suddenly I had no energy. And the real tipping point was I used to run a lot. And then I went running, and 5 minutes into my run, I felt like I had legs of lead and I could actually barely walk home. And I went to bed for a week and I thought I had flu. And then I recovered and I went back to work. And it wasn't also the kind of environment where you felt like you could be off sick.
Yeah.
It was really frowned upon.
Yeah.
So I had that time off. Then I went back to work. I felt like I was better. I went running again and the same thing happened. And I thought, oh God, I can't do this again. I can't have another week off. And I went to see the doctor and they went through my history and they said, we think you developed chronic fatigue syndrome from excessive kind of anxiety. You've burnt yourself out, basically. Mm. You probably need to find an easier job, work less hours, don't exercise, and take antidepressants. And I was like, okay,
that's not really going to work for me.
Not really what I'm going to do. But I mean, I actually had a really good doctor. She said, this is the protocol we recommend because there's no actual cure for chronic fatigue syndrome. Right. Don't tell me I can't do something about something. It's just a red rag to a bull. But I went to see a nutritional therapist and said, okay, what's really going on? And she measured my adrenal hormones, and my adrenal glands, which manage your stress response, were completely shot. But I said, what can we do about it? So she put me on a program to gradually rebuild them. And actually, in that regard, my boss was good and they did shorten my hours so I could keep working. But I mean, in that first year, I had 30 days off sick, which was really quite stressful. I could have easily had about 3 months off, but I just caffeined up and refused to give up. It took about 2-3 years to recover properly.
Wow.
I did recover, but I had to start resting, eating properly, not over-exercising. And it's always a balancing act. Anyone who's had chronic fatigue syndrome, who has it, will know you never necessarily fully recover. You just learn how to take care of yourself properly. So there's like a balancing act. I gave up alcohol. That made a huge difference. But if I do have a drink, then I need to have lots of rest the next day. I can't do something stressful. Or if I want to exercise a lot, I need to sleep more. If I'm working a lot, I actually, however annoying, I need to dial back my exercise. So I started to understand that there's a limit to what pressure I could put my body under. But if I manage that and balance it, I actually have, as you know, loads of energy. I recovered. I went on to a senior leadership position. I now run several businesses. So it wasn't the terrible life sentence that the doctors told me it was. But I had to learn to take care of myself to get to this place.
And how to listen to yourself and how to find a way of managing yourself that worked for you. And I think translating that into running your own business and to any other women watching, I think probably even more important in terms of listening to your body, listening to what you need and giving it, because I think there's certainly in the early days of business when it can be quite stressful, when you can get quite anxious, when it is, like we said, that roller coaster of emotions, as well as physical demands, resilience could go through the floor if you don't listen to yourself. I mean, do you see that with business owners just as much as, you know, kind of people in the corporate world?
It's actually quite similar between the CEOs I coach and the entrepreneurs, in that they have this infinite to-do list.
Yeah.
And they're driven people, so they always want to do more. Yeah. So they just find it really hard to stop until they kind of drive themselves into the ground. So that's, you know, one of the things I help them with. And a big part of that is just prioritizing. And the other big part of that is delegating. And even when you start your own business and you don't really have much money, I always encourage people to delegate as soon as possible.
Oh, I am 100% in agreement with you there. If it's not your forte and it doesn't need to be you doing it, get someone else to do it. 100%.
Exactly. So pay someone else to do it in a manageable way. You know, don't sign up lots of headcount and lots of people, but pay for a virtual assistant, pay for by the hour, for example, and delegate as much as you can. And that is really the answer to kind of that you can still progress and deliver value, whatever role you're in, but that you can also stay sane and not completely burn yourself out. So I think that's a definite top tip for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think if you can outsource it, I think the way my coach describes it, and I'm sure I've spoken about this on a live before, is the kind of the £10 tasks and the £1,000 tasks in your business. And you want to be focusing on the £1,000 task, you know, the stuff that's going to make a difference to your to your business, but you know, whether it's pitching to clients or whatever it is. Whereas actually all those £10 tasks, all the admin stuff, all the whatever social media, whatever it is, be getting someone else to do that. And like you said in the beginning, it doesn't have to be employing staff. I use freelancers and things, for one-off stuff and regular stuff. It can be scary in the beginning, I think, to, the idea of paying someone else to do something in your own business. But I think it's one of the only ways that I've been able to move forward, really, in that sense.
Absolutely. And don't just do it in work, do it at home, buy back time. Just, if it's paying the cleaner to do an extra hour so you don't have to sort out the laundry, then do that, because that's time that you need to have downtime. But I think that £1,000, £10 is a really good one. Except I would say, if there's a £10 task that you really enjoy doing, because there are sometimes some little tasks, whether they're at home or at work, that we know we're not the best people to do, but they actually give us pleasure. And so that's a top up. So then you should probably still do that, because you enjoy, whether it is that you enjoy playing around with social media, or if there is something you enjoy doing at home. Like a lot of my clients enjoy doing the garden. They don't want to pay a gardener. I mean, I'm useless with plants. So
I'm with you on that one.
I can't enjoy them, but I get that. So then that's their downtime. But if you're doing something and it wouldn't cost much to delegate it and it's not giving you any pleasure, definitely hand it off to someone else.
And probably taking you a lot of time. I am not a graphic designer. That is not my forte. Coming up with any kind of graphics, I'll get there eventually, but the time it will take me, I could have been focusing on much other things. But I think there can be a temptation in the beginning of business to feel like you have to do everything yourself. I describe it as like kind of wearing all the hats, which kind of maybe feels like what we should be doing, but actually doesn't benefit us at all. And like you said, can then lead to, the stress, the anxiety, the burnout, none of which is going to help us get to our ultimate goals, whatever they may be. So I love that. That's a great tip, and one that I'm very, very supportive of in terms of, delegating and outsourcing. What other advice would you offer, Emilie, in terms of like managing that resilience in your business?
I think having a team is really important, even though it's not people you hire. It's like, who are your friends? Who are your, I've got a mentor, I've got a coach, I've got a therapist. So I have people I can go to and have those conversations with. I've got really good friends who I can talk to about what I'm doing. I always talk about, get yourself a bitch buddy. Who can you vent to when you're annoyed about things? And they don't need to do anything other than agree with you and say, that sounds terrible. But when you're in a workplace, again, you have a team, you have people you can go to when it gets sticky. When you're a solo entrepreneur, you don't necessarily. And that's when you can start to feel a bit overwhelmed or no one's there to help you. And that's, again, if you're delegating out and you've got a virtual assistant, they can also be someone you can just say, can I just talk this through with you? I really think having a team, and also just having other entrepreneurs, other business people that you just socialize with, so you can, share war stories, share successes, and learn from each other. Because otherwise it can be quite a solitary endeavor, which it suits some people, but Sally, I'm quite a sociable person.
No, it can end up feeling quite insular, and I'm sure some people will have felt that even more so perhaps over the last 18 months. And I know I have, even though I'm identify with being an introvert, I've really missed that kind of inspiration and motivation that comes with connecting with other people, specifically, like you said, other people that are going through a similar-ish journey to you in terms of being entrepreneurs and working for yourself. But I think it's that, for me, it's that inspiration and motivation, I think, that comes from being around those people. And I've certainly missed that over the last 18 months. But I know in the beginning, I didn't actually know, like I said to you before we went live, I didn't actually know that many women that ran, or just people actually, men and women that ran their own business. So it can be needing to proactively, I think, probably seek out those circles and those communities. That's definitely made a difference to me. Absolutely. And is there any other advice you would give in that, carrying on with that kind of theme of being resilient in your business?
There's about structure and time and making sure you do take time for yourself. I think there's also working out what causes you stress and minimizing that. So for some people, they don't like the stress of not knowing where their work's coming from. For some people, it's the financial stress. But there are things you can do to mitigate that. So, for example, you and I both do lots of one-to-one work, and we also do corporate work. And corporate work tends to be more long-term, more reliable. So that gives you a more kind of longer-term view of income.
And that reassurance.
Exactly. And that means you can also be quite flexible with your one-to-one work, which I mean, I love everything I do, but it's really good to have a bit of a diversified portfolio of things that you do, but they're all playing to your strengths. So there'll be a theme, like my theme is helping people or businesses grow, but you're doing it in different ways. And it means you've got a bit more certainty, but also when circumstances change, like the pandemic, or if there's a financial crisis or something like that, then you're not just putting everything onto one, you haven't put everything on black in the casino. Yes. You're not just relying on one stream of business. So I've had moments where my corporate work's got really busy and my one-to-one work's died down, and vice versa. And I can ride that because I have different income streams. A lot of entrepreneurs are coached. I don't like how they're coached to have one thing, really find your niche and then just do that one thing. And that makes me slightly nervous, because actually, I say go exploring, build up a few different formats of your one thing. And also you might realize that you're really great at group work, but you wouldn't have ever tried it because someone said, just stick with your one thing. So I just think being quite curious and actually diversifying your format quite early is something that really worked for me. And I'd recommend people do that.
I love that idea. I think you're right. I think you do hear a lot about niching and being very specific about what you do and what you become known for. But I think you're right. I think necessarily without trying some of these things, you might not actually fall upon the format or the revenue stream or whatever it is that actually really kind of lights your fire. And I have two. I did have three. I do have two businesses. I don't think there's anything wrong with being diverse, as long as, you have the mechanics of helping that work, kind of going back to what we were saying before about having the right support and the right kind of assistance with that. But yeah, having a diverse income stream, like you said, especially in the last periods of time, like the last 18 months, it feels a little bit more secure, which certainly goes towards, that anxiety of the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur. It's so interesting. You and I could probably have this conversation probably for a couple of hours, Emilie.
Easily.
I'm probably going to leave it there. I see a couple of people have dipped in and out joining us live, so thank you for that. It's always lovely to catch up with you, Emilie. Thank you for joining us, and you're really some really useful insights there for anyone who is working for themselves or thinking about certainly going on that journey and managing that journey. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a joy to speak to you, and I love what you're doing, and I really hope people do get inspired to become entrepreneurs, but also to do it in a way that takes care of themselves and isn't unnecessarily stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key thing, isn't it? I think sometimes we can be tempted in the early days to put our business ahead of ourselves, where really, when it comes down to it, looking after our own health is really the most important thing. Yeah, no, I think that's a really important note to finish on. So thank you for anyone that's joining. Thank you for anyone that's been watching this on replay. I do these lives every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. If you're watching and you're a woman that has their own business and would like to take part, please do get in touch. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Take care.